Hi French learners! Today we are going to learn how to retain as much vocabulary as possible effortlessly. Allons-y, c'est parti!
Spent literally hours staring at a list of French vocabulary words, silently repeating them in your head only to wake up the next morning and realize your mind is completely blank? Yeah, it's the worst. If you're a student struggling to study French, or really any complex subject, you know this frustration intimately. You might even be sitting there right now thinking, man, I just have a terrible memory. But I'm here to tell you, no way. You absolutely do not have a bad memory, you just have a bad method. Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to completely rewire how you learn. And honestly, this quote from our source material absolutely hits the nail on the head. Repeating by heart is like digging a hole with a soup spoon. Think about it. For the vast majority of human history, we didn't have books or dictionaries or endless vocab lists. Our brains just aren't wired to memorize abstract sequences of letters on a blank page through sheer repetition. Trying to memorize a French word just by repeating its sound over and over, it's literally like trying to catch smoke with your bare hands. It's the mental equivalent of digging a massive trench with a tiny little soup spoon. Your brain just doesn't have anything to hook that information onto.
So in this explainer, our goal is to completely dismantle that myth of the fixed memory. Science shows us that no one actually has a bad memory. We really just have untrained memories. Whether you're trying to master French vocabulary, nail a presentation, or literally just remember the names of people you meet, we're going to walk through a step-by-step, science-backed guide to yank information out of your temporary workspace and lock it permanently into storage.
Okay, let's dive into our visual syllabus for today. First up, the trap of repetition. Second, optimizing your brain. Third, short-term versus long-term memory. Fourth, the PALAS method. And finally, the review protocol. This right here is your exact roadmap to rebuilding your study habits from the ground up. All right, Section 1, the trap of repetition. Why trying harder fails. Let's look at the biological reality of why simply rereading your notes gives you this totally false illusion of learning. See, from the literal second we learn a new piece of information, we start forgetting it. It's totally natural. If we remembered everything we ever saw, our brains would literally short-circuit. Your brain naturally deletes data unless you send it a highly specific signal screaming, "Hey, wait, this is vital for my survival." In fact, a 19th century German psychologist actually ran experiments on himself and discovered what we now call the curve of forgetting. And the brutal reality here? Without a specific technique, you're going to lose about 50% of new information within just 24 hours, and up to 80% within 48 hours. So if you spend an hour tonight repeating French vocabulary using the classic rote method, in 2 days, almost all of it is just gone. You aren't lacking discipline. You're just pouring water into a bucket that has a massive hole in the bottom.
Moving right along to Section 2, optimizing your brain. Hardware before software. Because before we get into the cool mental software and the memory tricks, we absolutely have to talk about your biological hardware. You could have the best memory techniques in the world, but if your daily environment is toxic to your brain, your efforts are going to be completely sabotaged. We need to look at what you're actually feeding your biological engine.
Now, take a close look at the brain killers column. Excess sugar directly attacks your hippocampus, which is literally the control center for your memory. Alcohol damages brain cells and causes short-term memory deficits. And chronic stress? It creates this mental overload that physically alters your brain's structure, completely blocking you from forming and retrieving memories. But check out the brain boosters side. A massive 2017 Swedish study tracked 1,400 people over 20 years. They found that brain-stimulating activities lowered the risk of Alzheimer's by a whopping 30%. Add in regular sports to increase blood flow, high-quality sleep to lock in that newly learned info, and a balanced diet, you are actively upgrading your brain's hardware. Which brings us to Section 3, short-term versus long-term, the brain's filing system. Let's see how our biological hardware actually structures its files. Think of your brain like a massive house, filled with highly specific rooms and drawers for different types of stuff. When you know exactly which drawer you put your keys in, you can easily just walk over and grab them, right? Memory works the exact same way.
Basically, we have two main workspaces. Short-term memory is incredibly limited. It can hold roughly 7 items, give or take a couple, for just a few seconds or minutes. It's super temporary. It's basically meant for dialing a phone number and then instantly forgetting it. Long-term memory, on the other hand, is basically infinite. It can store data permanently for years. Our main goal as students is to forcefully push our French vocab across this chasm, moving it from that limited, temporary workspace into the unlimited, permanent vault. And that transfer process, that's what we call consolidation.
All right, Section 4, the PALAS method, your mental architecture. This right here is the absolute climax of our explainer. We're talking about a step-by-step technique that goes all the way back to ancient Greece and Rome.
Remember how we said the human brain is terrible at remembering random lists of words? Well, you know what it is absolutely magnificent at remembering? Spatial information, locations, and physical routes. I actually want to challenge you directly right now. Close your eyes for a second and visualize your own living room. You can clearly see the front door, the sofa, maybe the TV, right? Boom. You just navigated a 3D space in your mind without even trying. We're going to use this superpower. To build your memory palace, choose a familiar room. Pick 3 anchor points, say the door, the sofa, and the TV. The golden rule here is to move in a logical path, like clockwise, and never ever cross your own path. These 3 points, they're now your permanent mental hooks.
So the crucial step is figuring out what exactly to hang on those hooks. Because if you just place a boring, normal vocabulary word on your mental sofa, you're going to remember the sofa, but you'll totally forget the word. Back in 1933, the von Restorff effect proved that our brains naturally forget the neutral and boring, but we permanently remember the absurd, the out of place, and the highly emotional. To make an image truly magnetic, we use VAKOG: visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, and gustatory senses. That means using wild imagination to associate the new French word with something you already know and creating a tiny, bizarre, multi-sensory story around it.
Let's walk through a highly specific case study for your French studies right now. Imagine you need to memorize the French word gargantua, which means something of a gigantic, disproportionate size. We go to that third anchor point in your living room, the TV. Now, the sound of gargantua kind of sounds like a guy named Gerald, who is a giant. So visualize the giant named Gerald, like 3 times his normal size, stomping into your living room and just violently crushing your TV with his massive foot. Hear the glass completely shatter, feel the floor literally shake. It's completely absurd, right? But by combining the sound of the word, its meaning, and this unforgettable multi-sensory action on your spatial anchor point, your brain has instantly locked it in.
And that brings us to Section 5, the review protocol, sealing the memory forever. Now, as incredibly powerful as that mental image of giant Gerald crushing your TV is, we have to talk about maintenance. Because even the absolute best, most vivid mental images will eventually fade over time if you just leave them alone. Without a highly specific strategic maintenance plan, you risk losing that beautifully crafted mental architecture.
This timeline right here is your exact review protocol. You don't need to study every single day. You just need to review the information at the exact moment your brain is about to forget it. So, you review 10 minutes after first learning it, then 24 hours later, then 1 week later, and finally, 1 month later. By sending these precise signals at these exact spaced intervals, you are literally tricking your brain into believing this French vocabulary is absolutely essential for your physical survival.
And when you do these reviews, you don't just passively read. You actively walk through your mental palace. First, walk the room forward, door, sofa, TV, letting those crazy images pop up. Then, and this is a massive workout for your brain, walk it backward, TV, sofa, door. Finally, for the toughest concepts, skip every other anchor point. Go from anchor 1 straight to 3, then 5. By navigating this mental space backward and non-linearly, you absolutely guarantee that you can instantly grab that vocabulary even under the intense pressure of an exam or a real-life conversation.
I want to wrap up with a provocative challenge for you. What are the 5 hardest French words you're struggling with right now? Take the next 24 hours to test this. Pick those 5 words, create mental anchors in your room, and build absurd, vivid stories on them. Review them tonight and again tomorrow morning. Once you apply this step-by-step guide and see just how effortlessly you can retain French vocabulary, you're going to want to take your skills out into the real world. And this is where you have an amazing option: to learn and speak with teacher Emanuela. She has years of experience teaching conversational and fluency French, fully backed by a university degree. By using your new memory techniques alongside her expert guidance, your speaking skills, your pronunciation, and that real-time correction will just skyrocket. So here's my final question to you. If you now have the exact blueprint to lock any piece of information into your brain permanently, what is the very first thing you're gonna master? The limits on your memory are completely gone. Go build your palace.
Ready to take your French to the next level? Subscribe for more learning strategies and professional tips from a French native teacher. And if this video helps you, don't forget to give it a thumbs up.